Let's begin with a prayer. Om Bhur-Bhuvah-Suvah Tat-Savitur-Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayat. Om Bhur-Bhuvah-Suvah Tat-Savitur-Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayat. Om Bhur-Bhuvah-Suvah Tat-Savitur-Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayat. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Father, Mother God, we humbly bow to you. We bow to the saints and sages of all religions. And we bow to the exalted lineage of Kriya Yoga Masters. And we bow to the living presence of God within each of you. We ask the presence of the Masters today as we come together for this talk, that we may be inspired and that the sense of value and the sense of values may ignite within us higher living for each of us. Amen. So thanks for sharing that prayer with me. I always love doing it, and it's I want to keep it going, so we do several of them. Richard Baba started our series of talks yesterday on the life and values from this beautiful book of Guruji's. So if any of you missed that, we'll have it on the online. But today I'm going to open the section on values. He did life yesterday, so we're going to start on values. And we're going to look at how we can use value to transform our lives, and that there's many kinds of values and certain values that are in our culture, and so we're going to look at those. But the idea is so that we can make choices in order to live a better life and transform our lives and really have the best life and the highest life we can. So we'll look at some beautiful values today. And as we talked of yesterday, this book really beautifully outlines and gives a really great direction on how we can live. So he starts the book with a quote from Gandhi. So let's look at that first. Keep your thoughts positive, for your thoughts become your words. Keep your words positive, for your words become your behavior. Keep your behavior positive, for your behavior becomes your habits. Keep your habits positive, for your habits become your values. Keep your values positive, for your values become your destiny. So what do we mean by values? And what is it that we value? So if we start unraveling that piece, do we start with thoughts? Or do we start at the bottom with values? Whichever direction, it is clear that thoughts, words, actions all go to make how we're going to have our destiny and where we're going from here. As we've looked at those teachings of the Masters, sometimes we talk about thoughts, sometimes we talk about words, sometimes we talk about duty. When we're looking today, it's how they all pull together in a way that drives where we're going and how we can go. So we mentioned yesterday that we all have the potential to lead a happy and peaceful life. And we want that happiness. It's the goal for all of us. It's in the scriptures. And following a proven roadmap is the fastest way to get there. And Guruji says that if we we can increase the quality of our life by increasing our values. But what though do we really mean when we're talking about values? So the definition is core beliefs or principles that guide behavior and decision making. And Guruji breaks it down into 3 kinds of values. So we have personal values, we have social and cultural values, and then we have universal values. And all of them play into our beliefs and our principles and how we map our behavior through those, from those outlets. So let's look first at personal values. They're changeable in nature. When I was a young girl, I had certain values that are past now. I have different values at this time. That things change and our values change because of what was happening with us personally. So there's a time changes. So I'm here today because I have I place a high value on serving the Guru. And I place a high value on coming to the forest in nature and being in nature. And I place a high value on being with all of you. So for me to come today and be with you and talking with you, it really fits my value system and all my behaviors. Now, someone else may put a high value on, say, casino gambling. They would be there and doing what they're doing, but I choose to be here. So when we go shopping, you have 2 items, and one that says it's value at $100, and one is $50. So who placed that value, and which one are we going to choose? Whatever we choose is where we are placing the value ourselves. We might go for the garment that was hand-stitched, because that's part of what we think and what's our values. Or we might go for the cheaper one that was just a knockoff. We don't care what it is, but we just need something to stay warm. So we make all those choices on the values, but somebody or something or something places the monetary value or what our value really is. So like on a scale. One example Guruji gave that he would take no amount of money to use tobacco. His value is such that he would not, there's no amount of money that would get him to do that. So that's his value, and he's holding steady with it. But we are tested all the time on, I may value to lose weight. And then I see a cookie, okay? So, your values are tested all the time. So we have to really be patient, but we have to know what we really value and what our values are. So a really wonderful way to kind of do a self-study on yourself and see where your mind may have something that says, oh, I really value that. But if you look at how you're living your life, it'll really show you where you're really placing your time to get to those values. So a really great tried and true test is to make a journal. Go back and see what you did for the last 2 weeks. Write it down, take a look at it, and then kind of couple the things together and see where you really did put your time, because that will show you, hands down, what you are really, how you're living your life according to your values. Maybe you think like, oh, meditation is a very high priority for me. And if you look, you spend maybe 5% of your time, and scrolling on the internet is 10% of your time. So take a look at this and really do that self-study. When we talk about self-study, we that's what that means. You take a look and see, what am I really doing? And how am I living my life according to my principles and my beliefs and where I want to get to? So if we remember the list, thought, word, deed, to beliefs, to values, am I going to get to where I want to go and have that goal? So remember, so those are our personal values, and we can really check on the personal values because they're the most fluid, okay, and where we can make the most change. Now, social and cultural values, it's a much bigger data set. It's what we have, maybe the values and mores, and they come with religion, or with your culture, or the country you came from. So they're really ingrained in us because it's like our mother tongue, right? And it's harder to change, but it's also, it shows us how to be more forgiving as well. So an example could be, in India, people eat with their hands. In America, we don't. We eat with utensils. And many people may have an opinion about that we still, what, all those people eating with their hands. It's their culture, it's their belief, it's how they were raised, it's their value. And so it's really important that we just observe what others are doing and take it with love and not make judgments on anybody else. As we saw with the personal values and the cultural values, the same. It's a personal choice. It's what they want to do. The person at the casino has nothing to do with me. What would I gain by having an opinion about that person? What would I gain by having an argument with somebody that my value is better than their values? It's a personal thing. It's for you. So it's really important in our thoughts to not make judgments on people and not make our words. This is, if you see somebody that's different than you, just use your words in a kind and loving way, and don't put upon them something about I'm better, I'm more strong, I'm this, I'm that, because this, when we're looking at the values, it's a direction for us to go. It's not a place for us to judge one another. And we'll go in, when we get really into the values, then we'll see how that works, and we'll get plenty of practice for that. So those are the kinds of things on the cultural values. Now the third group is the universal values. And these are permanent in nature, and they don't change. So we saw how personal and cultural, you can kind of see how things would change with time. But universal values don't change. And this is a real test to kind of tell the difference between a universal and a personal or social value, whether it changes over time. And the scriptures normally have the universal values in them that last through time. So I'm going to give you a story of my own about time and how I learned this principle. When I was a college student, I was introduced to Autobiography of a Yogi, and I started reading it, and with a group of friends, we studied the SRF lessons, and kind of got on the spiritual path in a way. I didn't have a really good meditation practice, but it was, I always say I was under the flag of Yogananda. But life changed, things go, that group of friends left, and I got involved in career, I got involved in different things, and my life started bumping along a little more, and so I thought it's time for spiritual practice, and I came back to the spiritual practice, and that was good. And then something else veered off, and I bumped along for some more years, and then some difficulty would come, and I would come back, and then something else would happen. as I was out there questing for stuff that didn't work, never really worked, didn't last, I'd come back to my Yogananda practices. And at one point, I had the epiphany that, wait a minute, every time I come back here, it's exactly where I left off. The rest of the stuff is changing around me, and it's not working for me. But if I come back here, it works. It's exactly where I left it. It's timeless. How could that be? I felt it completely within myself that this is something that is true, it's timeless, and it's the Kriya Yoga practice. It's the love of the masters, and it's that kind of thing that is timeless. So I, as you know, you don't know, but I began practicing and have stuck with it ever since. And having that anchor in something that is timeless, that has made all the difference in my life. I may try, like do something else or go with my job or my career, and you see other people's personal, cultural values and the way that they behave. But if I can stick with my timeless, true, universal value and universal peace, I have an anchor and I have someplace to stick with. So as we look at the values, understand and realize that that personal, universal values are where we want to stick with and what we want to stick to in order to really develop our lives. So truthfulness is, we'll go a little bit more on kind of the general values. Truthfulness is one of those universal values. And it's given a place of honor in all cultures and in religions. And it's just as valid today as it was back in Jesus' time, or the rishis. Truthfulness is time-tested. And when there is a universal value like that, we can also test whether it's fully assimilated in us. So when I said I have my anchor, but sometimes I go over here, if I'm over here and I get distracted enough, again, back to the money and the value, if I think truthfulness is really important and somebody offers me a lot of money to just tell a white lie or to tell the truth, to tell an untruth, I haven't fully assimilated my values. And so there's going to be a gap in my, a conflict in my thinking and in my psyche, because I'm not staying with my value and I'm not really holding with it. So you also will watch as you're doing your self-study whether the values cause, whether you're having conflict, and whether you just need to then kind of back up and really, come back to your center, come back to the value, and come back to what you believe and you want to do. Nothing wrong over here, but just know that you're adjusting your values in that way if you go against something that's your core value. And for me, in the United States right now, this whole concept of fake news, and I don't want to bring politics in, but that shows this kind of conflict that can happen when we know there's a truth. There is truth, and that's a very high value for Americans and for people in the world. And when we have something that is claiming to be fake news, it's caused a real rift in the soul of America. So we really need to be steadfast, even if it's a social or cultural value, that we maintain by individually keeping these cultural values and our social values solid so that they don't get whisked away. So in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, he lays out the 8 limbs of yoga. And he gives core tenets of how to live, how not to live, and goes forward. And the Bible also gives the 10 Commandments. The Quran has the tenets and rules and tenets. And so all the religions in the scriptures spell out what is a good roadmap for us to follow. They're a little bit different, but not really, because they're going to these universal values in the scriptures. So follow them and study them. So the first of the second of the yamas and the niyamas is satyam, or truthfulness. So as we begin the study, this is the core value that the Guruji set out first. So we'll look at truthfulness. We're going to look at ahimsa, nonviolence, and we're going to look at a surprise value. There's 3 to come. My coaches all told me to relax, so I guess that was my first round of that. Yeah. Okay, so satyam, truthfulness, we started on a little bit already, but we're going to dive into just truthfulness itself now. So I was first taught, and probably all of you heard the story about don't tell a lie, always tell the truth. And the basic story to that is tried and true, and Guruji also refers to it, that there's a little boy, and he is a shepherd. And his job is to watch the sheep, and the one thing he has to watch for is whether the wolf is coming. So he's up there kind of tooling along, and he thinks it's getting a little boring, so he yells, "Wolf, wolf!" And all the villagers run up, and there's no wolf. He was telling a fib. So they are like, this is not good. So he goes, and then days go by, and he's thinking, that was kind of fun to get everybody running up here. Let's do it again. Wolf, wolf. And they run up again, and this time there's still no wolf. And they scold him and say, never do this again. You don't do this. And they go back. So the next day, guess who comes? The wolf comes. And he yells, wolf, wolf, wolf. Nothing. Nobody trusts him because he's been telling lies. So truthfulness is really important, and that's the basic line that I learned from my folks, and you all probably got it too, because it's so clear. So how do we know what's really true? The villagers didn't know. They had to put their trust in somebody, right? But there's another story that really kind of addresses this, what is true. And that's the story of the 5 blind men who encounter an elephant. So one of the blind men gets his arms around a leg, and he says, oh, elephant, it's just like a tree. It's so big. And another blind man is against the body of the elephant. And he says, no, 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 elephant is like a wall. And he is sure of himself that elephant is like a wall. But someone in the front is seeing the trunk, and he's saying, no, 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 elephant is like a snake. It keeps moving. And someone is on the ear, and he's saying, oh, no, elephant is just like a fan. It's so beautiful. And the man on the back has the tail, and he says, no, elephant is like a snake. So which of these people, the blind men, is really telling the truth? Yeah?
They all are. Yeah.
They all are, right? Everybody's telling the truth in that one. So how are we to know if something is the truth? If we're using our perception, we can only know, our senses will only tell us what we see. And so again, to be arguing with somebody or believing that your sense of what's going on is better or different or right when someone else's isn't, you're really going against your word against theirs, because their senses are what they are determining. So here it's really important. And remember Gandhi's thing, our thought, So if you're thinking, I know what elephant is, and it is not a tree trunk, then that's really setting the precedent for division. If your words come out, fighting, I know what an elephant is, then that sets nothing. So we have to be really, really careful with our thoughts and our words and our actions when we are looking at what is truth. Okay, because we have again the relative truth and the personal truth and the social truths that change. But when we're on something that's outside of our perceptions to this universal truth, then we stick with it and we know what we have. So in Guruji's beautiful little book, What Do You Want to Be, Devilish or Divine? And it's kind of written in a more childlike manner. He says that satya, or truthfulness, is to speak agreeable words, honestly and faithfully, about anything that is heard, seen, or experienced without any manipulation or embellishment. So that practicing satya is really living the presence of God. So if there's no manipulation or embellishment in the truth, let's look at a couple variances of truth. We already saw that if we use our senses, we understand how limited that is. But Guruji talks about relative truth. And in relative truth, he gave the example of the story when he was, when he first came to the States, or to the West, and he had taken a leave from work, and he was supposed to be gone, say, 3 months. And then the trip got extended, and it was longer, and then things changed. It was out of his control. But he had a friend, a little child in India, that really revered him and knew that he was somebody who always told the truth. Well, he didn't tell the truth, or did he? Because he didn't come home on time. So is he lying? Should he be considered? The child was really disappointed that he disappointed her because he lied. Well, he says no, that when you're looking at that kind of situation or a relative truth, he himself or the person involved in it makes the decision of whether it's true or not true. Whether anyone else has, like the child had the opinion about it, but because they have the opinion, that does not make it true. He himself, who knows all the facts, gets to determine whether it's true or false. So again, we're on the self-study mode, and we make those choices ourselves because we determine ourselves in a relative truth what is true or false. So next, there's the spiritual or absolute truth, which we kind of looked at with the universal. And satya comes from the root sat, which means existence or eternity. So what is eternal, and I'll kind of read this, can be defined as what exists in the past, present, and future. So there's no time to this universal truth or the absolute truth. It lasts, it's unchanged, whether it's happened a long time ago, current, or in the future. So the changing body, which we all know, we get older, there's lots of changes in the body, that isn't eternal, that's changeable. But the soul that lives within us is eternal, and it is changeless. So the I, our soul within us, is truth, but the body is not. The I never changes, but the body does. So the soul is eternal, and the body is not. So truth is to be established in the soul. So to realize that I am the soul and not the body is our goal. So as you're looking at truth and looking for a universal starting point or a baseline that I found, you look for what is true and let your soul guide you in that. So a little child might have a toy, and they're happy with this toy for a while, and then maybe they get another toy, and that is useful for a while, and then the toy breaks, and then they're sad and they cry, and it's not a good scene. But when we know that we are the soul, and that then we can be free from expecting something to make us happy, like the new toy, the new toy, the new toy. Then we'll be free from pleasure and pain. So, but we need to be really careful to determine what changes and what doesn't change. So in our life, if we're like the child and we have the toy and we're constantly thinking that's going to make us happy, it's never going to make you happy. So it will make you a tiny bit happy maybe, but it's not going to be that lasting happiness to where we want to put our time and energy. But we want to place a high value on those universal and absolute truths. So we're told by the masters to seek the highest truth. That my story of coming here because I like to be at the ashram better than at the casino, that's the highest truth we're told to go for, that we're going to get more, that's what our soul wants us to do. And another quote here, people mistakenly identify themselves with the temporary body. And then an example of that is there was a Greek slave who became a famous philosopher, but he was lame, and so he limped. And one day somebody kind of was teasing him and says, "Hey, lame." And he says, "No, my body is lame, but I am not lame." So the soul is truth and God is truth. Establish yourself in the soul and in the truth of that. And so be like the slave. The body might be false, but I am not false. Remember that. That's always where we want to be. And keep yourself, if we're going to go for that highest truth, keep yourself in good company. We're told, the masters tell us to stay in good company, speak sweetly, do your study and meditate, and let your thoughts be good, and don't waste time or potential falling into the negative thoughts, words, and deeds again. So if you keep busy, the negative thoughts cannot enter. So let truth motivate your actions. And once you accept truth, practice it. Keep it going. So unless we put truth into practice, our life will never evolve, Guruji says. So be established in truth. And this itself is truthfulness, to be established in the truth. So once we incorporate this value in our daily life, our life will be considerably richer and more beautiful. And that has been my experience by coming to that point of my touchstone. So the next value we'll look at is ahimsa, or non-violence. And this again is one of the yamas, and it's the first yama. And it's kind of the easiest one to remember in a lot of ways. And it reminds us, it takes us back to thought, word, and deed. We clearly practice ahimsa in our thought, word, and deed. So Patanjali talks about just that. So thought, he says, is the root of creation and the cause and the seed of creation. So everything kind of starts with our thought. And the words that we use should be used sweetly without hurting others. So we want to keep our thoughts pure and our words pure. And our deeds, if we pay attention and follow the motivation, we can keep our actions from hurting others. So it's our actions that really make something pure or not pure. A knife in the hands of a surgeon is a good thing. A knife in the hands of a robber is a bad thing. So the motivation and the action is what causes something to be harmful. So there's a story about thought. There was a king, and he wanted to, he thought, well, I wonder how powerful my thoughts are. So he dressed up and disguised himself, and he went out among his subjects, and he looked and he saw an old man, and he was very poor and kind of ragged clothes, and he was carrying a bundle of sticks on his back. And the king thought, oh, that is such a nice man, and I should give him more charity, and he needs more from me. He's such a good man. So he goes to the man and says, have you heard the king died? And he just fell to his knees, and he said, oh, that was such a good king. He was so kind, and he always helped the poor. And I just am so sad that he died. Well, then the king said, no, well, he didn't really die. And takes him on. But he goes on to the next guy, and he sees someone who's very rich and kind of arrogant. And the king thinks, oh, he is so rich, and he doesn't do anything with his money, and I should tax him more because he's not a good man. So he goes and he tells the man, he says, have you heard the king died? And this guy says, good riddance to him. All he ever wanted to do was tax the rich. He was such a bad king. I didn't like him at all. And the king's like, oh my goodness, the power of my thought went right to their actions. And he could see tangibly how powerful the thought is. And I'm sure we could test ourselves, but our thoughts are that powerful. So we must be really careful with our thought. And the words we want to speak sweetly and kindly always. Gurudev would often tell the story of that your words are more powerful than a bullet, because a bullet will kill you once or hurt you once, but your words go on and on and on. And you might still be, even when I tell that story, you may think of some words or something that someone said to you that still ruminates within you because it doesn't go away. So when people come at you with harmful words, they last. And it's one of Gurudev's great teachings is that be careful with your words because they're more harmful than a bullet. And that's really, really important. So when Richard Baba initiates, he always says, let you never use your words as a weapon. And I always think that's such a beautiful thought, that what a prayer that we may be free from using our words as a weapon. So take care of that one. So let's see where we are now. I'm lost. Pause. No. Okay, well, let's just return the page. There we go. Okay. Now, ahimsa, we often think of food, right? And that's kind of where I first heard about ahimsa. And so it's a really beautiful and complicated place to start thinking of not harming things. Because as vegetarians, we would think, oh my goodness, taking animals is harming animals. And it certainly is. But it's all rather relative. There's like gradations. An Orthodox Jain is very, very, very careful and doesn't even walk around at night because they might step on a worm or kill something. And I've seen Jains that wear a face mask all the time because they don't want to accidentally suck in a bug, because so they're very, very, very careful. I think that most of probably the vegetarians in this room would not be quite that careful. So as we're thinking ahimsa, it's something that we have to choose as we go, Because a carrot, if I'm chopping a carrot, that's a life form, but it's not the same. It's not an animal life form, but there's still life forms. So as you think of ahimsa and food, again, don't be so, or be open to others. And you make your own personal choices. Guruji says that according to practicing ahimsa with food choices is a personal choice, is what he says in this section. And that a tiger doesn't have a choice. It eats meat. And a deer doesn't have a choice. It eats the plants. So, but as humans, we have that choice. So we should very carefully make our choices because as humans, we have that ability. So there are lots of gradations that you can go with, but he suggests taking simple, wholesome foods in the diet while keeping conscious of ahimsa. So no one's saying you can't chop that carrot, but just make wholesome choices. And this is if you want to test your values and start practicing the value of ahimsa, do it on your plate, because that's a really important way and an easy way to see it right in front of you, how you treat other things. So another interesting conflict between truth and nonviolence is a story of a monk who saw a deer in the forest. He sees the deer going by, and then, of course, very quickly comes the hunter, and he says, "Which way did the deer go?" What's he going to do? He's in conflict. Does he tell a lie and jeopardize the deer? Or, tell a lie and tell the hunter he doesn't know? Or does he say, oh, the deer went this way, and jeopardize the deer? So he's in personal conflict. So none of these values are easy to deal with, but he's in personal conflict. So Gandhi, who was a great proponent of nonviolence, explained that we don't have to answer every question if it's going to cause us conflict with that kind of ahimsa. We can make that choice. And Guruji also gives another version of the story, and the monk responds, "My eyes saw but cannot speak, and my mouth can speak, but it did not see." So we don't always have to answer everything that somebody wants to know, or if it's going to jeopardize your own values and your value of ahimsa. So Guruji says that walking the path of complete nonviolence is not easy. And Guruji suggests that to ensure that we are practicing truthfulness and in ahimsa, that we watch every thought and to pray to God to be free from negative habits. So in the words of Shirdi Sai Baba, hurt never, help ever. So let's take that simple adage as we go into thinking like we're going to practice ahimsa. So the next value that we'll look at is shaksham, or purity. And it's the second of the niyamas and one of the basic human values. So we all deserve the privilege of a clean body, clean clothing, clean water, clean home, and a clean planet. And we can help each other with that. Guruji says we should clean our teeth every morning and evening at least, and we're to bathe daily, and we should eat healthy foods, and to pray to God and offer thanks at all times. And these should be the basics. And all those mentioned represent external cleanliness. But then there's also an internal cleanliness that is a very high value. So internal cleanliness is cleaning the inner instruments of the mind, intellect, ego, and memory. We spoke of those yesterday. So the mind needs to be healthy and strong in order to live a happy life. If we start with thoughts, then the mind needs to be pure. So how do we clean the mind? We can study the mind, and Guruji's book has a great book on Know Your Mind. So we know that there's a lot to it, right? So he's suggesting here that just as water cleans the body, we can clean our minds with love. And like soap and water, soap cleans the body, we'll clean the mind with knowledge. Let knowledge be the soap. So your love is the water for purifying the mind, and knowledge is the soap to scrub off all the pieces of the mind. Do your self-study and know the mind, and add the love and knowledge and clean your mind so that it can be elevated to the higher states. So he says another way to clean the mind is to practice praktipakta bhavana, which means opposite thought. So we see this in the St. Francis prayer, right? Where there is hatred, let me bring love. Where there is discord, let me bring unity. So it's that kind of thinking. When you're in a negative situation and a negative thought comes up, offer the opposite. So, the opposite thought. So if someone's coming at you negatively, reframe it to where you have a more positive thought or a more positive reaction. So even when someone causes you pain or comes at you with a blow, and Jesus said that, turn the other cheek. So you can, if someone gives you a blow, you carry that pain with you, and it could, like the negative thought or the word, it'll resonate within you and it'll stick with you. But if you reframe it immediately, change your mind and accept it in a more loving way or respond to them in a loving way, then you will be away from that pain and you'll have cleansed the mind. You'll have cleansed yourself of that blow. So our mind will flow to peace and purity by reframing or bringing in the opposite thought. So think about ways that you may actually incorporate that to be cleaning your mind and freeing the mind. So other ways he suggests are fasting, maybe eating fruit now and again. So switching up what you do from your normal habits. And to always pray before going to bed, doing a bow when you go to bed and a bow when you first wake up. Really good habits to cleanse the mind, to cleanse yourself. And important, if you make a mistake out of an old habit, just pray sincerely that with a positive attitude you can change that habit and you can change that way of being. So we are not stuck in this, we are not stuck in our old habits. We can change them. We can make, even our destiny we can change. I think that's why we are all loving Kriya Yoga, because of the option to change our destiny by doing this practice and connecting with the masters. So these are little practical tips how to keep one step going into actually changing ourselves. Let's see. So in closing, I want to encourage us to do that writing test. Just log what you did for the last couple weeks and see how much what you're doing and where you're putting your energy, and it will give you a good picture in that self-study of what you're really valuing. You may think what you value is different than what you are actually doing. So I want to challenge you to do that so that we can together make the kind of values that will make our better world and will bring our whole community up and will follow the masters in a better way. So let's really do that self-study. It's part of our Kriya Yoga, our Svadhyaya. Oh, yes. And Guruji reminds us once again to keep smiling. And he often talks of smiling, and I wanted to close the section with him talking about smiling. Because he says, a smile increases our face value. So when you're full of joy, it will bring joy to all those around you. Jai Guru. And I value you all. It's such a pleasure to be with you. Yeah. So let us close with a prayer. Asato ma sat kamaya, tamaso ma jyotir kamaya, mrityor ma amritam gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.